Libra, your February 2026 forecast on the screen, your event chart, and Venus, your ruler, very close to the sparkling energies of Mercury as we go into this month. What a combination. That's really exciting. But you also have, of course, those other players in Aquarius, which shares your air triplicity. So we're talking about communication. But Aquarius in the 5th house for you is showcasing your talent. And you also have Pluto and Mars very close together too. Don't underestimate your sex appeal. They're going to animate it hugely. And you could have a little bit of a choice to make as you come into this month, Libra, because the moon, you can see, starts the month very high in the sky for you. You have Jupiter there as well in the most public parts of your chart. But later on the 1st, the moon goes face to face with the sun and we get that proud Leo full moon. And over the following 2 weeks, the choices may be, do you continue to invest a lot of energy, spirit and enthusiasm in the things that inspire you, or are you mindful of the needs or points of view of the people you're connected to? And that's that 11th house energy with the moon. And to be honest, there are times when we do need to be utterly single-minded. And certainly Mars and Pluto can give you a lot of strength of purpose, but just be aware that Jupiter does forge a quincunx with both Venus and Mercury at the start of this month. So if there is something creative you're doing that could have some kind of impact on your professional situation, or you want to raise your profile, talk to someone influential, it will be really important that added to the flair and ingenuity that you're going to show, that the details are really sound too, that you don't rush those. And of course details often come from the energy of Saturn, which is quite gritty, and over the last couple of years, apart from that brief sojourn into Aries last year, Saturn has been asking you to work very, very hard and to be very sacrificing and aware and conscientious. Now, Saturn is going to move at the heart of this month, which some astrologers will say is the big story. I feel the biggest of the stories this month is actually to do with Uranus. Uranus goes direct on the 4th after a 5-month retrograde. However, it started that journey initially in Gemini, which shares your air triplicity. More recently going through the 8th house, and it is going to be in the 8th house through to the 26th of April. Now, over the last 7 years, all but those 4 months in Gemini last year, that 8th house energy is very much about deep connections, long-term financial planning, business matters, and all of those areas may have been unsettled, unpredictable, and that might not have been easy. And this month, because Uranus is going to hit into a very tense and potentially challenging square with the Sun in week 3, and then comes into an even more testing right angle with Mars in the last week, if there is something around a connection which is inhibiting, you may need to face it once and for all. And that's where Saturn can come into the equation, I think, because it's very much about you setting boundaries. But on the 6th, Mercury moves out of Aquarius and for you into your 6th house. It's going to be joined by Venus on the 10th and the Sun on the 18th. But Mercury in Pisces is a really challenging part of its journey, to be honest. The wateriness of Pisces and the mutability, which the 2 signs that Mercury rules of Gemini and Virgo both share. But here, because of that more opaque energies of Pisces, the details could be harder to grapple with, particularly from the 26th when Mercury goes retrograde, but more of that shortly. But what Venus moving into Pisces, which is a much better fit, asks you to do is at times, just show good grace. If there are some things that you do need to grapple with that are a little bit niggling, perhaps even a little bit dull, just try to go with it. But on the 14th, the Saturn does return to Aries, but forges a brilliant link to Pluto, which it will do for the next month or so. it is giving you an opportunity to be firmer about where you will say no. And if that's something that you have struggled with in your life, because I think Libran people, you are a cardinal sign, you are a leader, and when you're cross, you can show some of the characteristics of Aries. But I think a lot of Libran people do lean into other people, can be very skilled listeners and communicators. But if you felt that there's been a lot of give and not always a lot of respect back, the desire to firm up your boundaries is going to be enormously strengthened over the next 2.25 years. But on the 17th we have a solar eclipse in Aquarius, the first for 8 years, but in that 10th right angle to Uranus. If there's someone that you're deeply attracted to as you go into this month, and with Mars and Pluto in a conjunction, if there is someone you're intimate with, it can be hot. But you could reach a point where you're considering whether having that electric sexual chemistry comes at some kind of cost. Because Saturn moving into the 7th house can see you crave for some kind of stability. So if someone tends to be very changeable, maybe uses some less than admirable traits, is rather jealous or controlling or possessive, that's something you're going to resist in a big way. But the Sun moving into the sign of Pisces on the 18th to join up with Venus and Mercury also asks you to be pragmatic. So on the 20th we do have Saturn and Neptune in a conjunction, but this time in Aries for the first time since 1987. Then it was the Berlin Wall that came down. What's going to change now? Well, it's a new dawn. You know, Aries is the first zodiac sign. Saturn's not a great fit, and of course it's a fire sign, and Neptune's watery. So I think we're all going to be sort of working at this, but for you it's very much about relationship matters. Big shifts are going on there, but because Mars and Uranus are in a square towards the end of this month, I feel that you're going to be much clearer about what you will or will not accept, even if it does take some drama out of your life that is in some ways somewhat addictive. Because if you do have a very sparky relationship, that can bring a lot of colour and a lot of passion to play, but I think you're going to become much more determined about when to say no and getting people to be much more conscious of respecting you. But in terms of your professional interactions, your ruler Venus forges a fantastic link with Jupiter as this month draws to a close, and a good piece of news could come up around your professional situation, maybe even a new contract. And as the month comes to a close, Mercury and Venus, just like they started the month, are back in conjunction, but with Mercury in a retrograde. So details will be extremely important from the 26th, because as I mentioned, Mercury in Pisces can be very tricky anyway, and that is going to be heightened from the 26th onwards. But as ever with Mercury retrogrades, we can think about the details that go wrong, or we can work on what we can improve. And for you, the 6th house can be about things like diet, exercise, nutrition, rest. And the more you think about Mercury or talk about those topics, and the more insights you gain, the better it's going to be. Thank you so much for joining me. Please do like, hype or comment the video. If you've yet to subscribe, do so now. And please also join me at patrickarundel.com. We've made even more changes to the website, and it's really coming together now. If you've yet to order your personal forecast for the next 12 months, please see the link below and get half price, 50% off.